Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to our Massive Product episode where we interview thought leaders like Amy on the impact of AI on product management and on the role of product managers. In our studio today, we have Amy Mitchell. She has over 20 years of product management experience. She's currently the director of product at Dell, and she's the author of one of my favorite Substack newsletters, Product Management IRL, which stands for In Real Life. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I run a boutique consulting firm where I help product managers and product organizations adopt AI. I also have a Substack, which is how I met Amy, where I share practical tips and strategies on how you can actually automate PM tasks. Amy, welcome to the show, and thank you for being our first guest. Would you like to just take a few words and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Mustafa. I'm a product manager and I do new services. So my product is a service that we deliver to our customers. I also write about a lot of my experiences in my newsletter, which is how we met. And I've been doing some experimenting with AI, and I'm so glad I can share with you some of my opinions and some of my experience on using it in my job.
Yeah, good. And Amy, we want to hear everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll tell you some of everything.
Good. So why don't we start there? So share with me how you're using AI for product management. And then I like to talk about if you know of any of how your team members are using AI. So let's do both.
Yeah. So in my job, I'm a business to business product manager. So I'm always on the cutting edge. A lot of times it's a merging of two different technologies. In my case, it's packaging up a service so that we can sell it over and over again. And I have to get people to do things they've never done before. And as you know, Mustafa, AI has only been around a couple of years. And a lot of times they they aren't that familiar with how you would merge two technologies together. So I have to be like so innovative and I have to influence people. A lot of us product managers, I'm sure you've had it as
Oh,
well.
yes.
People don't want to do new stuff. Why are you changing it? It's going to cost a lot of money. Is it going to make us money? And I've had trouble getting AI to answer those kinds of questions.
Right.
So
Have you
I
tried
really,
to ask AI those questions, or how have you actually gone about doing it?
yeah, like some examples and are like, I have a new product initiative. How do I get it spun up quickly?
Mhm.
And AI came back with some nice things. On those kinds of generic problems, it is a big help. And you had mentioned one time, like, use it as your sparring partner.
Yes.
So, like, when I have a new initiative dropped on me and I've got to get busy people to do things for me, AI gave me some great ideas, like communicate transparently, lay out your vision carefully, things like that. But it couldn't write it for me because I had a specific product initiative I was trying to do. So
Yeah.
that's and this was like pre PRD. You and other people have talked about how you can get AI to write a PRD and like write a PRD to do delete mail in Gmail.
Yes.
It can come back with that stuff, but you have to go convince people to follow you.
Yeah, I agree. I think the following part is hard. I do think some of the things that you're mentioning about it being I think it being a sparring partner is fantastic, right? And I use it all the time. I do use it a lot of times to write PRDs. In fact, I'll send this to you. I'm doing a free email course. So I'll make sure that I'll add you to it about how to write PRDs, if that's okay with you. Um,
Yeah.
tell
And
me, sorry, go ahead.
there's another key part of a PRD that I've also struggled with AI to help me on, and that's the business case.
Yeah.
Preparing a business case where you have to talk to people like, well, how many of these could you sell? What would be the monthly recurring you could get on the sale? And then on the other side, I have to calculate the costs as well. So I'm creating something new, and I'm sure AI could say, well, you got to calculate your costs and subtract it from the revenue, and that's your margin. And but
Yeah.
but I need to put that in the context of the PRD to say, well, if we go do XYZ, I forecast we could make this much every month, and it will cost us this much. And we need to spend some amount on sales training or a partner development. That part, I've, again, it's been helpful as a sparring partner, but it can't write it for me.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not there yet to build a business case, but like you said, it can help you think it through as to saying, okay, if I want to build this business case, what are the dimensions I need to look at, right?
On the
So
critical thinking, yeah,
exactly.
it's really helpful.
So I'm curious, have you been have you been able to use it successfully for something else?
Yeah, and on like, how do I get the product initiative? That was a real life
Yes.
experience where I could outline the steps and then I translate into what I needed. Um, Another case was, I'm looking at my notes because I knew you were going to ask this. I've had a struggle. We have early adopter customers,
Hmm.
and early adopter customers are a little tricky for product managers. I'm sure you've been there, where they're not quite what you expected. And people get all flustered. Oh, this customer wanted this thing and we weren't ready for it.
Hmm.
And so I did go to AI and chat GPT and said, what are some of the challenges a product manager should overcome on early adopter customers? And it came back with some ideas like, look for patterns, try to get sales to help you move them more to your target customer. So that was another helpful case where, in the pattern you see here, is it's like a generic problem. It's not like, how do I get a customer to buy the managed service I'm selling? It's, but you, so a lot of what I've liked what you do, Mustafa, is you put some thought into the question. Is back to the critical thinking, to have a good question that then you can take that answer and apply it to your real
Yeah,
situation.
you're absolutely right. I think how you ask the question to AI is very important. But also, the second part that you mentioned is that the AI is never going to do 100% of anything, right? It's going to probably get you to 60 to 80% up there. And
That's
after
a good
that, you still have to do the 20% or the 40%, whatever that might be, which, frankly speaking, in my opinion, is great because that is really, to me, the perfect combination of human and AI working together, right? If you have AI do like 99% of the job, then the question is, then why do you need people, right? But I actually think it's the opposite. I actually think that AI can get you to a certain point, but then all your years of experience is what really takes it from that 60% or 80% to 100%, which is complete, right? I love that. I
that's
love
a,
that.
yeah, that's a good point. And like, I was thinking about this over the weekend. When you write a PRD, suppose it was the most beautiful thing. You don't send it in an email to your head of engineering and say, "Let me know when it's done." Um, they
I
they need
wish.
to, yeah, and and you need to be able to explain it in their context, and that's what product managers. That we're like chameleons. We can work with engineering, we can work with marketing, we can work with sales, and AI can certainly help you prepare for that. Like,
Yeah,
what keeps a salesperson up at night? That gives you a lot of insight in how you're gonna get them to agree to your forecast. Or how does an engineer take it?
I wonder if you've tried it. So one of the students has used AI as in they'll take a PRD or any document, for example, and then say that, you know what, I'm about to go present this to a CFO or a CMO or chief sales officer. What are the 10 questions you think they'll ask me? And they've been using AI to help them prepare for these type of meetings, right? And I'm sure
That's-
some of the questions that'll come back are things that the product managers already thought about, but it's really those questions in the left field that really throw you for a curve. And then AI actually can help you not only figure out what the questions are, but maybe in a response to the questions too.
yeah, to be prepared for it. And that's why it kind of irritates me when people say, "Oh, yeah, I wrote a PRD and I've cut so much time out of my job." When so much at any level of a product manager, you need to influence people
And
and
the influence people.
collaborate and even adapt. Like you said, you're going to get no matter how well prepared, you're going to get something out of left field, and you need to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
Or you can even say, "I need to think about it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the AI can help you with the writing part, but the influence part is a whole that's the human skills that we need, right? And AI can prepare you for the influence part, but it cannot do it for you. So that's great. Any other examples that come to mind?
Another one that came to mind is when you have to make a judgment call or make a decision. And a lot of times, product managers, we're really worried. We don't want to hold up a decision because we're oftentimes holding up the whole product
Right.
initiative or the product team. So you want to make a decision quickly and stick it, but you need help to think through the trade offs. And AI can help, at least it's helped me think of some of the trade offs.
Yeah.
Like, what if I release something and there's a security flaw?
Yeah.
Well, it could tell you what happens on a security flaw. So then I can think about, do I want to take this risk or not? And risk management is is a thinking game,
Yeah.
and having some fresh ideas helps you.
I agree.
So, yeah.
And frankly speaking, it's not something that comes naturally. At least it didn't come naturally to me when I was a product manager, right? Not just the risk management piece, but also the negative edge cases or the negative acceptance criteria, right? Those things don't come easily to me. So at least it's been my experience that I can use AI for some of that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. And with so many of us being remote and sometimes going to the office, sometimes meeting, you have to do a lot more stuff offline. And it's helpful to have somebody to think these things through when the somebody is AI.
Yeah. I think it's always that. I like your philosophy and analogy because I do agree with you that it is really a symbiotic relationship, right? And how much you choose to use AI for certain things really matter on the task itself, right? And so maybe the writing part you can use more of AI, but then the influencing part, the AI is more of an advisor or a sparring partner, and so it changes. This is good. Anything else that comes to mind before we move on?
Well, I think it is good to help advise people on thinking of questions because where my questions come from, a lot of times I'm building on my experience,
Mm.
whereas somebody starting out in product management could probably use help on asking questions. I know I didn't always know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
So, and you get such nice answers. You have to be careful how you use them.
Yes, I do agree. I think just using AI to come up with questions to ask is in itself is of value, right? And then being able to help it even answer them helps. But I've noticed that especially PMs who are starting off, for them, AI is a huge level up, right? It really brings like you and I struggle, at least when I was a first PM. I shouldn't talk about you, but at least when I was first a product manager, and this is 20 years ago, I really didn't know what I was doing, right? I really didn't know what I was doing. And yes, the company had a process, so I followed the process. But the process just is like what 10% of your job.
For sure. And I had the same trouble I moved from engineering to product management, and I bounced around and made lots of mistakes because I thought I had to have the exact answer every
Yeah.
time, which you of course you have to do in engineering, but having where's the trending answer? What does my gut tell me? Because there's so much more you have to do because you have to know the engineering and the business and how they come together. And if you do everything based on exact fact and down to the detail, you miss the big picture. That's what we need product managers to see the big picture.
Well, I
And
think
yeah.
the scope is so big for a PM, and on top of it, it's a very creative field. Uh, and I think that's where I think it requires us to be comfortable with certain things at a certain point in time, right? But then it's always good to actually have something like AI that you can go and ask questions that you can never ask somebody else. Because I don't know about you, but I was always embarrassed to ask these questions. Like, are these questions too basic? Like, should I not be asking these questions? And maybe, maybe they might think that, oh, maybe Mustafa doesn't know what he's talking about. So I was always afraid of asking certain questions. But it
Yeah,
also goes with AI, right? There's no
and
judgment.
high tech. Yeah, high tech. You kind of you need product managers to be leaders,
Yeah.
and if you're too vulnerable, people don't want to follow you. But yet you need to know stuff. And I know when I first had a good mentor in product management, I would just confidently say, well, I got to go study this, and this, and then I can answer this sales support question. And he said, well, what do you think the answer is? I tell him the answer, and he said, just give that answer. So it didn't even occur to me. A lot of times I didn't know the right question.
Yeah. So, given the context of what we just shared about, right? Any insights on how do you think the PM role is going to change? Like parts of it will remain the same, right? The influence part that we just talked about. I'm curious from your perspective, how much is it going to change and what is going to change?
Yeah, I think the amount of change will be similar to like when Agile came on the scene,
Mm,
or when we started seeing program managers that are PMP certified, and we started having a process to get offers out or get products out. So it, both of these were like huge game changing changes, especially
right.
going waterfall to Agile.
Definitely.
And a lot of it comes down to how do you communicate? How do you predict?
Yeah.
How do you anticipate people? And it's going to be like, and feels like to me like an extension of my product management skills that I've got this AI that can help me with my critical thinking, can help me anticipate, it'll help me communicate better. So you're just like we've seen from back when we were all running around doing waterfall and every program had its own sort of cycle time. We all said, "Oh, Agile's really big," or "Oh, now we got gates. It's going to be changing," and it made it easier. It made us work together a lot better because we had these common ways of doing things.
Well, that and it requires a new skill and a new muscle, right?
Mhm.
Way of thinking about your job, right? But if you think
Yeah.
about those things like agile, waterfall, going from waterfall to agile, and going to modern product management development practices, those are still fairly big changes, and you can argue that some organizations still have not made that leap, right?
Mhm.
And I'm curious, is that the kind of adoption resistance you think AI will face as well?
Yeah, I think there probably are people that don't really wanna get on the AI bandwagon, or they've they've had a bad experience. "Oh, AI wrote a crappy PRD, and that
Sure.
shows you AI is not helpful." Well, but we still have to communicate. We still have to have empathy about our product teams. We still need to know how to work together, business and technology, and anticipate where the business is going and be ready for it. And AI will help us. But you're right. There's probably people who don't want to use it, or they're going to say, kind of like I said at the beginning, my thing is so new, so unique. There's no way AI could ever help me.
Yeah.
And you learn and you reach out, you collaborate, and then you realize, well, maybe there is something here to AI. But you got to watch out. Just like agile, not the answer either
No.
to everything.
No. And you're right. I mean, I think it is well, first of all, AI is so new. Like you said earlier, it's only been around, or at least what we think about AI now, right? And when we think really, but is really generative. It's been around only for the last 2 years, right? And I think most people are still trying to come to grips as to what it is and what it can do and how it works, as opposed to even thinking about how you can use it for your own benefit.
And it's complex. Even following agile is complex. So it's not like, oh, there's this mold here and poof, you got an answer either. Complex things need time.
Talking about complexity, what do you think is the hardest part about adopting AI? Where do you think most people struggle or most PMs struggle?
That's a good question. I think it's on asking the questions that help and bring the aha moment to you. And because I've asked simple questions and the AI's given me stupid answers.
It's very good
I
at
was
doing it.
yeah. I I was kind of struck recently that sometimes you're leading people into the unknown,
Right.
right? And so you kind of know the direction and then you get inputs and you got to change direction a little bit. And so I asked AI, "Can you tell me more about pioneering leadership?" Because I thought maybe I was thinking about scouting parties going out in the Old West, and how did those guys figure it out? Surely they were going into unknown. They didn't know where they were going to go. So maybe somebody AI could talk about that type of leadership. It's a style of leadership. So I tried it to both Chat GPT and Copilot. Chat GPT gave me really solid answers. Be ready to adapt, communicate your vision, delegate. And over on Copilot, they gave me like historical figures and talked about how they killed people. So it didn't really help.
Yeah.
So I think asking asking the right questions, learning from it, and learning some of the nuances of the tool you're using. So uh, Copilot's been very good. It's very good on finding stuff on the web, a lot better than Google,
Definitely.
but then it sometimes gives me bad answers. Whereas ChatGPT doesn't really give me enough references that if I want to drill down into something. So you need to know the tool.
Yeah. Two things. Number one, first of all, I absolutely agree with you. How you ask questions is just as important as the answer you get because there's a direct correlation to the quality of answer, right? And I have found out through the hard way that there's a certain way to ask questions, there's certain ways not to ask questions. And it takes time to get to understand how that works, right?
Yeah.
AI is, it's just like, there's a certain ebb and flow about how you use it. And that takes a little bit of experimentation.
Yeah, and they're updating their tools, right? So ChatGPT just went to 4.0 and it's giving a different flavor of answers that you have to learn how
Yeah.
to get around.
Yeah. And then second thing is if you haven't tried it, you should try a tool called Perplexity.
I've seen that. Have you tried it? What is it? What's it
I
like?
use Perplexity a lot for market research. So exactly what you said earlier, especially when I want to do market research or market sizing, and where sources are variable is a combination of what ChatGPT does and what Google search does. So it mixes the two together.
Let's try that. Is it free?
Yes.
Cool.
It's a great way because one of the things that we do um, is I teach my students how to do a lot of market research and how you can actually use Perplexity to not only search the data that you're looking for, but then it will actually go in and summarize it for you. So this way, it will search the web, it will read the reports, and it will give you a quick summary. You
Cool.
still have to go and read the reports, so it does not mean that you don't do that, but it's a good way to start, right? I think that's great. Let me ask you, so I know we focus a lot on product managers. I'm curious, as we start using AI more and more, what does it mean for the organization itself? Does the organization need to do things differently?
That's a good question. And I've been, I wonder about that. For, for one thing, the organization has certain needs as well of product managers. Products need to be, um, they need to be solid. You don't want to be sued because of your product or ethical issues. And I could see AI eventually helping to keep straight versioning, for example, or who's bought in to a certain version, warning us, did we get proper security checks? Is what we're doing something that we could get sued for in the future? Is it opening us up for liability? I can see AI being a big helper on that to keep companies, organizations out of trouble because product managers got so much, like we were talking about, so much you got to do. And it's easy to forget that. And there's like open source checks and stuff like that. There's a ton of very diligent, detailed work that product managers need to stay on top of. I could see AI helping quite a bit.
I do think that there's lots of use cases, like you just mentioned, in which organizations can start adopting. And, it doesn't have to be all in, right? You can do baby steps. Uh, I guess the other question is, do you see differences in maybe changing process or organization or team structure based on AI? Or do you still think things stay the same?
Question. I could see AI as it helps and offloads things that maybe it would elevate product management to a different role in the organization.
Amy, can I pause you for a minute? I'm getting a lot of echo on my end, and I want to make sure the recording is okay. So let me just pause the recording for a minute. Yes? Yes. Sorry, I apologize. I'm not sure why. Okay, we're back. So, Amy, I think that's great. And, organizations can adopt at their own pace, would make sense. But I'm curious, do you think AI will require organizations to change process or organization structure or even team structure?
Well, I think as it relates to product, especially as AI can pick up some detail things, and also as we enter a world where product managers are all being aided by AI,
Mm-hmm.
I could see the product role perhaps could be more and a more elevated role
Yeah.
because a lot of the details being taken care of, and maybe you don't need as many lawyers watching out for
Mm,
stuff. Maybe you don't need as many documentation people making sure that you're not opening yourself to liability. So you could see that the product's bringing in more revenue, it's safer
Yeah.
revenue, and those resources are getting redeployed maybe into product.
Yeah.
Maybe if you need 1/10 of your lawyers, they they could maybe help incorporate more good things into the product with the help of AI.
I I agree with you. I think there's multiple opportunities. Number one, to your point earlier, I do see the role expanding, right? Because now with AI, you can do a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think that helps. I also think that depending on who you are, that's good and bad at the same time. So if you spend, yeah, so you know the same, like there's different types of product managers. There's product managers who are very good at strategic piece. There's people who are very good at influencing, and there's product managers who are very good at doing the blocking and tackling part of PM work,
Ex-
right? I think AI can help with the blocking and tackling piece, but the other two, it can assist, but it cannot do a lot of it, right? And I think it's going to force PMs to move upstream or up to value, which I think is always a good thing, right? But I think it's also is that there's going to be some people who just can't, and I think that so it's good and bad at the same time.
Yeah, thinking about risks and trade-offs is really important, and you kind of need experienced people to do that. Even as AI helps elevate everyone, there's bigger risks too.
I think it's going to be easy to be a PM, and it's going to be harder to be a PM at the same time, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ethics questions and security questions, privacy questions that isn't that big of a deal today, but
Right.
it's going to become really important
Yeah,
pretty quicker than we expect.
I agree. Amy, I know we're almost out of time. I do have two more questions. All right. The first one is given this new world and it's still being developed, so to speak, what's the best way for PMs to start acquiring these skills?
Well, having mentors, of course, reading newsletters like ours, where especially where we share case studies.
Yeah.
I think that helps PMs get ready for it, is learning from other people's mistakes, talking to other people, getting coaching, because these are like those soft skills you talk about, and they're hard to get out of a book. You need to get them from observing and reflecting and trying things.
And getting your hands dirty, which is the key.
Yeah.
So anything else that comes to
I I think getting things done.
mind?
We can AI, and I've found it to me, it can get me into delays that I'm just like delaying getting something done.
Right.
Like, you ask AI a question, you get an answer, and then it's time to go roll your sleeves up and do something with that answer. And it's so tempting to just sit around and talk to AI more and ask the question a little bit different. And that's a problem for a lot of product managers. We get too many irons in the fire, too much work in progress. And AI helps us, unfortunately, get more extended
Yeah.
when we need to remind ourselves, and still you still got to do time management. You still got to reflect on how could I have done that better. So we need to don't go down the rabbit hole. Time block yourself and get something done.
Because you're absolutely right. There has to be action afterwards, right? AI can do so much, but it cannot, quote unquote, cook your breakfast. Help you plan and prep for it, but that's about it. Great. Last question, Amy. I asked this question to everyone is, do you have a favorite AI tool? And I'm curious why.
Yeah, I really like Chat GPT because I like you've talked about, I need that sparring partner. I need to ask what if or what are the trade offs. And Copilot hasn't really given that to me.
Right.
Copilot's more like a search on steroids. But maybe I need to try Perplexity, like you suggested. That might get me more. But I've really been pleased with Chat GPT. But another good thing is it remembers what I've talked about.
Yeah.
So I've had problems with Copilot losing track of what subject we're on, and we all get interrupted or we got to do something else, and it's nice to come back to where I was. So
Yeah.
that's why I like it.
I agree. I think you should definitely try Perplexity. And if you like, at least especially for my writing, I use Claude AI a lot.
Oh,
So,
I haven't tried that one either.
I think you sometimes OpenAI or ChatGPT can sound a bit more robotic, but Claude is much more natural speak, so to speak. So I use that for writing a lot. Actually, I use it for doing a lot of analysis too. It's actually quite good at doing analysis as well. But just a few ideas for you to consider.
Good. I'll have to try them out and come back and tell you. Maybe I'll have a new
Perfect.
favorite.
Yes, I would love to.
Yeah.
In fact, we should probably do this again and to see if any of your responses have changed, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm
Since
sure
you
they have, because this thing is changing so fast, right?
Yeah, I'm sure you've changed too as you've been
Oh,
trying
yes.
different tools and even from class to class. And
Oh, yeah. In fact, I mean, these things are changing so fast. Almost 20 to 25% of my class content keeps changing after month after month. So every cohort gets 25% new and new and new. So I don't think so. Like I said, we're very much at the beginning. We're not leveled off anytime soon. And so the things that you can do, the tools you can use, how you can use them, it's all changing. And with every new model, there's new nuances you have to figure out how to do. But anyway, thank you very much, Amy, for the interview. I do
thank
appreciate
you. And it was fun.
it. It was fun. I
Yeah.
love it. Thank you. I'm gonna end the recording here.